late, Commander.
Captain Roberts, I presume.
Guilty as charged, sir.
Well, it's about goddamn time.
I'm hit.
Get the hell out of there, Captain.
I'll draw their fire. Just get the President's transport out of here.
Copy that.
Breaking news just in. We're receiving reports that London has fallen. I repeat, London has...
It's no good, Captain. It's over.
Good luck, Commander. Stay legendary.
Ever onward.
Mr. Roberts, hit us in the morning.
Hello, magnificent eye drums. It's Monday, 14th of June, 2021, and we do warmly welcome you to this, the 20th edition of the Late Night Noisecast, and the first in a new series. Once again, attempting to do all we can and all we must to ensure that feasts of reason and flows of soul continue in whatever the hell times we're living through. Now, this is clearly not the Voicing the World bunker. It is hot as hell in here. So hot, in fact, that the camera has given up at least 17 times. So if my takes appear abrupt at any point, it's because they're about the 85th attempt at each. And it is primarily, however you describe that color, answers on a postcard. Please, I must admit I'm coming to you a little raw this evening after something of a horror show of the last 6 months. If I recall describing 2020 as the emotional equivalent of a cavity search, then holy was it merely a dress rehearsal for the varied horrors of 2021. So as such, there was an episode in the works back in January, February time when we were due to relaunch everything. Musicians were booked and everything was assumed to be underway and ready to be launched upon you, our much appreciated dear viewers. As events transpired, that was not the case. And thus, tonight, I'm here to put right what once went wrong, as it were, in true Quantum Leap style. And I'm delighted to say that all of the musicians and the interview that was booked and recorded back then will appear on this evening's show. As such, it also behoves me to send preposterous quantities of gratitude to 12th Peer's very own Alex Raffel, media manager at 12th Peer for us, who has done the most remarkable job of creating content where there was none forthcoming from myself during this time, in order to keep all of you engaged, to keep everyone interested in the show, coming up with all kind of different backstories for the Spoof Noise trilogy and otherwise just the most spectacular social media campaigning I've ever seen, with such a distinct, spectacular lack of content provided by the, well, in this case, me. So a huge debt of gratitude, as ever, to Alex Raffel and, of course, to you wonderful viewers for returning this evening as you are and watching me sit here and ramble in this vortex of existence. So, first up, we have our first SuperCircle member of the evening, someone who has supported 12th Pier on the social media waves throughout, and someone who certainly her music was of great comfort to me back then, and even more so now as I bring it to your attention this evening. So, this is Colette O Connor with People on the Porch.
Sleepy little place called Tinkertown is a mystery of sorts. Two mannequins, a girl and a guy, are dressed out on a porch. Depending on the weather, he and she outside are suitably dressed, and together they sit like people on a porch. When I'm driving by, I slow down to see, I feel like such a spy. What are they wearing? It's kinda rude to pry, but not like I can go up and say hi. That's crazy. Those people on the porch. Weird people on the porch. And I'm the dummy watching this fashion mystery and wishing now that I never did see those people on the porch. In the winter they wear scarves and hats, ski jackets and warm pants. Summertime, it's beach attire, margaritas in their hands. It's fun to watch their story, soap opera quality. Like that week they refused to speak with back turns stubbornly. It damn near made me cry, such a tragedy. I wanted them to try what's come over me. I called a flower guy, but hung up when he started asking why. Exactly. Don't ask me. Weird people on the porch, and I'm the dummy watching this fashion mystery and wishing now that I never did see those people on the porch. Then one day in fall, I could hardly breathe. They were not there at all. What was happening? That's it once and for all. I went up to the railing, I didn't stop to think, but then I saw the notice with so much great relief. On vacation! Ah, those people on the porch. Weird people on the porch. For years they've been together, loyal night and day. Still a mystery, but I'm glad to see those people on the porch. Weird people on the porch. My people on the porch.
A distinguished adventurer in all things music, poetry, art, and photography there, Colette O Connor. My thanks again to Colette for being so supportive of 12th Pier for the duration and engaging on social media and otherwise. And also, as I understand it, for quite the solid shout-out on US radio of late for 12th Pier. So many thanks for that. Colette's backstory has so much nuance and entertaining twists and turns therein that they're beyond the mere confines of my soundbite territory here. And so I think the only thing to do is to invite Colette on the show. Therefore, Colette, if you're available, then at your earliest possible convenience, we shall set up an interview with yourself and we can explore all the excitements therein. In the meantime, then please be sure, links as ever below, to be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and all of the other things that we find ourselves doing in this interwebbery techno wonderland that we occupy. And so to our second featured act of the evening, and those of you who have been with us for the duration may well remember my sublime interview with Emma Purslow and David Zucchi, who were setting up some basement sessions, basement performance sessions in London. At the time, I approached them with the possibility of a partnership and indeed declared that potential on the show. And I'm delighted to say that they agreed to be a part of that. Back in January, February time, they provided me with a stunning performance from the cellist Ruth Hallows, also the host of the blog From a Cellist's Perspective. And so it is my great pleasure this evening to bring the first of the Late Night Noisecast in collaboration with Emma Perslow and David Zucchi's Basement Sessions. This is Ruth Hallows performing Saraband and Jag from J.S. Bach's Cello Suite in G major. Ruth Hallows there in Bachian Poise my thanks to her and, of course, also to Emma and David for joining forces, as it were, with the Noisecast. Huge gratitude again to everyone for having provided this music way back when and finally having their moment on the show now. And as ever, links below, folks. You know what to do by now. As we turn then to our final SuperCircle artist of the evening, I am inclined to note that one of the best things about the manner in which this show was developing, and we hope continues to develop from here on, was the manner in which so many of you, so many artists out there, approached us with music videos and music tracks to be featured on the show, something I continue to actively encourage. So please continue to get in touch and send all your tracks through, and we will work our merry way through them as such as the seasons progress. One of the first such people to approach us in this manner was Mr. Alastair Penman, gifted and pioneering writer and saxophonist, clarinetist, and educator. I had the great pleasure of interviewing Alastair back in February, and I'm delighted to say that we're going to feature a track of his now from his new EP, Do You Hear Me?, followed by an interview with the great man himself, with, once again, apologies from me for him and this interview effectively having been sat in a Quantum Leap waiting room for the last 4 months. So, without further ado, ploughing ahead as it were, this is Alastair Penman with his track Change Is Coming, followed by a conversation with the good sir himself. Alastair Penman, As I Live and Breathe, how the devil are you doing, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. And yourself?
Wonderful. All the better for seeing you in situ here on the new show of the season. As it behoves me to say, as has become tradition in this setting, I must first ask you, what's happening in your glass?
Well, I've just got a gin and tonic with me today, so nothing too exciting, but pretty standard.
That's all right. Standardly exciting to me. I must say they're not sponsors of the show in any way, shape, or form, but I'm currently hooked on Badger's Thirsty Ferret, which is doing a fine job of keeping things flowing here.
Very good. Maybe they should sponsor the show.
I'm glad you said that, Alastair. By all means, let's get that rolling out there. Now then, we just heard your track, A Change Is Coming. I would like to ask you what the change that you foresee coming is, please.
Well, I mean, yeah, this is a track off the new EP I've just done, Do You Hear Me, which is all kind of reflecting on climate issue that we're facing. And I mean, that track, basically, I mean, change is coming whether we like it or not. And it's whether we allow the changes we're causing to happen, kind of in destroying the climate and the raising temperature and all the consequences of that, or whether we actually act and do something ourselves and kind of stop the catastrophe that we're heading towards. And that's kind of what that track is all about. The changes that we need to make, or that we'll face if we don't do anything about it, really.
Right. Across the record, Do You Hear Me? Does that theme permeate throughout the situation, or is it just relevant to that track? Yeah,
I mean, all the tracks are basically the whole theme, this kind of climate issue, and they're all exploring slightly different areas. So, I mean, the first track, Do You Hear Me, is rather, I mean, it's obviously a quote from Greta Thunberg's speech, and it's kind of inspired by people like her kind of taking the message out and really making the point that people need to start listening. And it's this thing, kind of everyone knows about climate change now. No one really debates that it's an issue anymore. I mean, or only a few people still debate it's an issue. But nothing kind of is really being done on it on a large scale. I mean, if you look at governments and things, they're all kind of making fairly token efforts. But actually, what it really needs is kind of the general public to make such a noise about it that there's no other option than for people to act, really. And it's kind of an interesting issue, the fact that politicians need to come up with policies, but we're also, a lot of the policy is actually driven by kind of the private companies who have got the money to invest and kind of find technology, find solutions. And then we've got to get that kind of successful enough that it becomes usable by everyone, and the governments can kind of bring in policies to support this. But I mean, there's this kind of flow across the album, just this, I think it's kind of probably the most in-your-face music I've ever recorded, particularly that first track, just kind of trying to make people sit up and listen. I mean, and that, yeah, the second track as well, Our House is on Fire. Again, another quote from Greta Thunberg, of course. And that one as well is kind of very in your face, kind of, yeah, smashes in with baritone saxophones at the beginning. I think that's the most baritone saxophones I've ever put on a track of music before. But yeah, lots of different kind of themes. And I guess the third track, Ignorant Complicity, that's actually the only track that wasn't written specifically for the album. It existed, I first wrote that in 2017. It was a commission by a group called Park Lane Group. And I think the subject matter of it probably upset them somewhat because they didn't know what I was going to write. But the whole point of that track was the fact, kind of, all the things we do every day, kind of without really understanding the consequences. And I mean, at the time I wrote that was around the time of kind of Trump getting elected and the Brexit vote and lots of things going on in the world that I don't think people kind of fully understood what the consequences were going to be.
There's much to delve into there in terms of that which you bring to the table. But I'd like to delve in, first of all, into what brought you first to a a passion for and being compelled to incorporate these aspects of climate change, climate crisis into your own artistic journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few things. I mean, I come from a scientific background, so I've always been kind of interested in that sort of stuff. My first degree was actually in engineering rather than music, so I'm kind of come from that background. But my initial way into kind of learning more about this was actually probably through when I went vegan quite a while back, which again, that was something I'd never really thought about eating meat or anything. And well, one thing that you often get criticized, get told there are preachy vegans trying to tell everyone what to do and something. But the thing you have to remember is almost every vegan used to eat meat at some point. So there's kind of this like no one's perfect. But that I was first kind of awakened to when I used to teach in a music school on Saturday mornings, and I kind of saw the butchers would arrive out my window every morning, butchers, and I see all the carcasses getting delivered and things, and kind of that was when I kind of connected it and thought, actually, I don't really want anything to do with that, and kind of very quickly gave up meat. And then kind of when I was looking more into kind of veganism and alternative options and stuff, that's when you start uncovering kind of some of the stuff that's going on. And that was when I really discovered that kind of one of the biggest causes of climate change is livestock farming, and kind of the huge inefficiencies in the system. Kind of if you think of the amount of water and the amount of land required to grow a cow so you can eat it, as opposed to kind of just growing the crops, there's huge inefficiencies in the system. And then kind of looking into that and discovering more about what's going on in the climate, you just see kind of all the different areas kind of where things are happening. And it's quite terrifying when you look back and see how long we've known about climate change. And for example, all the kind of the oil and gas companies had kind of known what issues they're causing for decades, and obviously they've not wanted to tell anyone about it, so they've kind of helped to cover it up in a way. And it's now it's getting to the point where it's so serious, kind of we have to do something about it, I think. It's interesting, my dad actually worked in the oil industry for his whole career, and it's at that time, I mean, he's been retired for a while now, but at that time I obviously wasn't aware there was anything kind of going on in the oil and gas industry that was causing climate change. I was kind of too young to understand that. But now I find it kind of very interesting, because at the time I was seeing all these kind of amazing projects he was working on and stuff. He was involved, he was a structural designer for oil rigs, essentially. And at the time I was like, oh, this is all kind of cool, amazing engineering stuff. And you don't really understand. And I expect at the time he probably didn't realize, he probably had no idea that this was contributing to climate change. It's kind of, as we understand more, we've just got to kind of take that information and kind of do the best we can with it, and try and stop the things that we can stop, and try and basically act before it's too late, really.
I'm very interested in the age of the image where we find ourselves here. You know, this show began just as an audio experience, and then moved into music video territory, which has been interesting in terms of the sort of breadth of artists who attach imagery to their music, and therefore are typically featured on this show, compared to just the abundance of audio only tracks. In terms of the intensity and the artistic intent of your music, to what extent is it attached to the visuals, and to what extent does it communicate as audio only?
It's an interesting one. This project was actually, I mean, is really tied into the visuals. And I mean, although there is a CD release, the best way to consume it is probably to watch it with the videos. And I think the videos add a lot to it. It was the first time I've ever commissioned videos to go with it. They're actually done by a guy called Tom Gimson, who himself is a brilliant sax player, actually. And he used to play in one of my sax quartets, in fact, and left to pursue a full-time career as a photographer and videographer. And I mean, he was the natural person to work with on this, just because we kind of know each other and interconnected. He's a brilliant videographer. But really, with this project, we're trying to get the maximum impact, and the videos, I think, really add to that. I mean, Tom's done an amazing job of bringing it all together. It was interesting, yeah, because it's the first time I've ever commissioned videos, and for the first 3 tracks on the album, I actually gave Tom very specific kind of briefs of what I wanted, and I basically timelined the whole things, because I couldn't kind of, in my head, I couldn't work out what was going to happen. So the only way I could do it was to kind of do everything, the timeline of what I thought, and then I gave them to Tom and said that this is what I've come up with, but this is absolutely not prescriptive. Kind of take that as a starting point and go and do your own thing with it, which he did amazingly well. I mean, the videos he's come up with are absolutely brilliant, I think. And the last track, we saw Changes Coming. On that one, I mean, it's all based around this imagery of kind of the block of ice that kind of melts over the course of the video. And again, that's kind of just the symbolism of, it's almost kind of our melting ice caps and showing kind of what's happening as the world is warming. And actually with that, Tom had that massive block of ice was delivered to his flat, and then he filmed it that day, kind of melting over the course of the day to get all the images for, which I think was quite a fun thing to do. I remember asking, when he told me he'd ordered this massive block of ice, I was like, so what happens if you're out? And it's like, you're going to pick it up the next day and it will just be a very soggy box. But yeah, it was brilliant with all of that. And it's, I mean, the difference as well, the first 3 tracks have all got kind of lots of facts and figures incorporated into the videos, whereas the final one is more kind of an artistic one. And that one, I gave Tom complete free range over that, basically to kind of use his artistic expression. And as well, kind of the videos almost informed the music as well as the music informing the videos, because the way we went about the process was I kind of created all the demos, and then I'd sent all the demos to Tom, and Tom made the videos. At the same time, we were recording kind of the album in the studio. And when we did the final mixing, Tom had pretty much finished the video, so we were almost kind of mixing the music to the videos at that point. So it was kind of like, initially the videos came from the music, but then the music was further influenced by the videos. So it's kind of got this real kind of interconnection between it all, which is quite nice.
Absolutely. You mentioned John Hall there. Could you elaborate on your creative partnership with him, please?
Yeah, John, I've been really lucky to work with John. I mean, some people may not have come across John before, but he's one of these people who has had an insane career. I mean, I think John is still the best-selling classical saxophonist of all time, and he's done things like The Last Night at the Proms and all that, but he's also a producer. He's worked on film scores. He wrote the theme tune to Silent Witness, is one of his more famous tracks he did. He's written a whole load of dance tracks and things, and in fact he was musical advisor to Paul McCartney for quite a while as well, and he's just the most amazing musician to work with. And I do find it interesting working with John, because I find quite often John is he'll have an idea and he'll be very set on it, and it's almost hard to argue with sometimes. But I find probably 99% of the time, whatever he's said was the thing to do turns out to have been the right thing. So it's kind of, and in fact, this album was an interesting one. Again, it was mainly on the first track on Do You Hear Me, when I'd done the demos, or sorry, when we'd recorded it, and then I handed it over to John to produce it. John almost said, he was like, you need to kind of just step back and relinquish ownership of these tracks to me while I go away and produce it, and then listen to the final result. He was like, that'll be much easier than listening to it at each stage and being like, oh, I like that or don't like that. And it's, and I mean, the big thing listening to the first mixes and John's final ones is just the amount of power and impact behind them. I mean, he's added in so much to that. I mean, I was very lucky. I first met John through a scheme with an organisation called the City Music Foundation. And I won an award with when I just graduated. And they basically said, you can have a musical mentor. Who would you like? And it was like free range, anyone I asked for, they would try and sort out. And I asked for John. And very fortunately for me, John said yes. And it was from that, I went down and met John and had a couple of lessons. And that was the point. I was working on my first album, Electric Dawn. And John said, how about you record it on my label and I'll produce it for you? And that was kind of the start of that relationship. So he produced that album, and then, on his record label. And then this recent one as well, I'd kind of been working on something and talking to John, and it just seemed, yeah, kind of the natural path to do it on John's label and for him to produce it all. But it's he's brilliant to work with. He's quite an amazing guy.
One of the key questions that I've been asking across this series is the notion of, for you as a creator in this time, what are the fundamental principles, fundamental lessons that you've taken from this last year, and what are you looking to take forward and develop as this situation unfolds?
I think one of the biggest things is just being flexible and being resourceful and being prepared for anything, essentially. I think one of the things I always tell my students anyway is to look at having, as musicians, we talk of portfolio careers is kind of the classic thing. But kind of the more different strings you've got to your bow, the more adaptable you can be. And then kind of when situations come up like this, it's always looking at ways that you can do things that are going to help people and kind of looking for opportunities and things that people want, rather than being like, oh no, it's all terrible, everything's come crashing down, what am I going to do? It's kind of having kind of lots of ideas and things, and being adaptable. It's been amazing realizing how much you can achieve working online as well. Teaching, there are certain things that teaching online is amazing. There's so much you can do that we couldn't do before, kind of instantly sharing things with people. And a lot of, stuff like with technology, like teaching Logic and stuff, screen sharing makes it almost easier than being in the same room as someone. It's kind of, it's great the stuff you can do. But then also it makes you aware of the things that you really miss. And like the importance of playing with other musicians in the same room. I remember near the start of the first lockdown, I was experimenting with Jared McChrystal, another sax player I coach on various courses with. And we were trying out all the different programs you could have that were designed for kind of zero latency playing together over the internet. Actually, I wrote a piece on it for the MU that was quite interesting, comparing all the different platforms. Right. But what we discovered, largely, unfortunately, none of them are brilliant. But there was one that we got good enough that we could play some duets over, and it's just that thing of reacting to another musician rather than a click track. And it really makes you think about those things. So we'll all enjoy it much more, kind of when we're back together. But I think the main lessons of that are just being adaptable, and doing as many things as you can, and kind of keeping lots of plates spinning. But yeah, having lots of different areas to explore.
Alastair Penman there on transformative form, as it were. My thanks to him, of course to Ruth, to Emma, and to David, and of course to Colette O Connor. Until next time, this has been the Late Night Noisecast on oddly coloured location, and it behoves me once again with great relief to say, good luck, stay legendary, and ever onward to you all.